Hello. Hi. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Power Series, and thank you all for joining us. Today, to celebrate Earth Day 2020, we'll be discussing the power of circularity with four amazing guests. Szaky, the founder and CEO of the innovative recycling company TerraCycle. Jorn Werdelin, the co-founder of the luxury watch brand Linde Werdelin. Vanessa Jacobs, the founder and CEO of the on-demand luxury repairing service, The Restory, and the sustainable fashion activist and founder of Converted Closet, Kate McGuire. The conversation will be moderated by Positive Luxury CEO Diana Verde Nieto. And before we start, I just want to let you know that you can submit your questions anytime during the webinar, and our panel will answer them at the end. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you very much to Kate, Vanessa, Tom, and Jorn for joining us today. And such a special day because it's our planet's birthday. And I'd like to start today with a memory, actually. I was trained by Al Gore when I started my career in sustainability. And he always started his presentation with this beautiful picture of our planet called Earthrise. Earthrise was taken in 1968, on the 24th of December, 1958. That's the picture. By the Apollo 8 mission. And it was William Anders, the astronaut, who would take this. This is the first time that people could see our beautiful blue planet in its absolute magnificent splendor. Today, this probably looks a little bit different with a lot of like satellites and rubbish all over, which thankfully have not been captured then. So what this takes me to is the subject today, which is circularity, and the fact that there is no way. And we have four fantastic guests to talk about circularity and circular economy and the principles of it. So circular economy is a system that eliminates waste, and that's primarily what it does. But also is this generative system with basically transition from a linear way of production and disposal to a way in which the raw materials have this fantastic value and must not be discarded or disposed. And I'd like to start the conversation with Tom, actually, which is the founder of this fantastic company called TerraCycle. And Tom, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? Because you do mainly, we work not just luxury, but also fast-moving consumer good companies. So over to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me, and it's a real pleasure to be here with everyone, the audience and our fellow panelists. So very, very quickly, I've been running TerraCycle for close to 20 years. We are a global waste management company, but very unique. We operate in 20 countries, mostly developed countries, in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Oceania, and then as a for-profit social business, and then in 2 countries, India and Thailand, as an NGO. Our whole goal is to transition from linear systems to circular ones. And that's sort of a 3-stage process. We begin first by asking companies, is that object, could be a product or a package, could be B2B, B2C, could be mass market, could be luxury product. We work with every one of these sectors from Chanel all the way down to P&G. If today that object is not recyclable, which is usually the case if a garbage company cannot make money collecting and recycling it, then we set up national platforms to collect and recycle it. And that could be everything from dirty diapers to cigarette butts and thousands of other waste streams. Then from there, once that's going, we ask companies, how can we help you integrate waste back into your product? And here we specialize on waste streams that otherwise don't have supply chains. So if you take a luxury example, we're actually developing a luxury product coincidentally with a timepiece manufacturer that's made from the waste from Mount Everest. So it'd be very exotic luxury waste, all the way down to things like ocean plastic, festival waste, and so on to make consumer products. And our final step, which is not under the TerraCycle brand, but under the Loop brand, asks the question, how do we move away from a single-use system where the best solution is recycling to a reusable system where the object can go around over and over and over? Loop has started with, you would call it the fast-moving consumer products, but is also now entering into luxury with personal care, like cosmetics and perfumes. And just imagine or think about, if what our grandparents' cosmetics look like. 80 years ago, it would have been beautiful crystal compared to what it is now. How do we bring that back without consumers having to pay for it? And that's what Loop is all about.
Thank you very much. And I mean, I like to carry on with the theme of circularity and what's the definition? And I like to pick up on the timepieces part. And Jorn, I mean, you produce fantastic timepieces. Tell us a little bit more, what is circularity for you?
Well, I mean, first, thank you for being part of this. I think when we started out selling, making timepieces back in 2007, being from a Scandinavian Danish origin, there's always been part of our DNA to think about the environment and how we treat the planet. And about 5 years ago, we sort of started thinking more constructively about how we could behave, where we are in an industry which basically, or traditionally, has been about make a timepiece, sell a timepiece, make another one, sell another one. One of the issues that we normally have is that we make one watch per customer. So whenever we have to sell the next piece, we have to go to and find a new customer. And I thought for many reasons, this is not really a very workable business model. So we started thinking about, well, how can we, first of all, get away from this of constantly making new stuff, new timepieces, new straps, new boxes, new marketing material, etc., to kind of treat the customer in sort of from cradle to grave perspective, and thereby get away from the notion that to create a business or to have a business, constantly worry about making new things. So it's taken us a good sort of 4 or 5 years to get to a place where we're almost independent of making new material. And we work very much with, this circularity, or from cradle to grave perspective, in that once we have made a watch and it sits on a customer's wrist, we will customize it, we will buy it back. If there's another one sold, we will facilitate pre-owned. And we were the first one in our industry back in 2016 to introduce our own pre-owned platform, which is like premium, we authenticate it, we service it, etc., etc. And for me, it has been, it's been like this 5-year journey of getting to where we are now. But it is very much now about servicing the individual customer rather than making new timepieces all the time.
Thank you very much. And we're very, very proud that you've been certified with the butterfly mark. So very proud to have you in our community.
So am I. Thank you.
And this takes me to Vanessa. And I met Vanessa almost 10 years ago. Can you believe that? We met in a dinner. And Vanessa was telling me about the Restory and what she wanted to create, that is a service or a company that actually repairs everything. And at the time, we were pretty much alone into this luxury space, caring and mindful luxury. And we kind of had a really great conversation. And then fast forward 10 years, and the Restory is a fantastic success, not just a dream on a piece of paper like it was Positive Luxury back then as well. And you have done an absolutely amazing job into creating a fantastic business, and you're in the process of scaling it. So on a personal level, I am honored to have met you, and you inspire me every day. So I'd love you to tell us a little more about, that dream that is some amazing business today.
Well, unlike you, thank you very much. It's very kind of you to say, and it's and equally that was I had the idea that was slightly different than what it's turned out to be today a long time ago, and I had just started to kind of put some meat on the bones when I first met Diana. And unlike Diana, I was not as high-minded back then. I was more I did feel like I was never kind of into gross or like kind of gross consumption. I was never kind of a retail therapist. That, you know, I never kind of bought into those things. I always felt very frustrated when I would but I would also, so I would, you know, I would save, and I would try to be a bit more mindful of what I bought and what I wore, and that happened to just suit my style as well. But I was always very frustrated that I couldn't get services that were easy, and I couldn't get them that were, you know, they always seemed so just hard to find, and hard to find someone who could trust, and always very random, and certainly not delivered in, like, you know, the most modern way. And so I started trying to create a service, not realizing what had happened to the actual talent that kind of that would drive these services. And once I got into that, then I started really caring about that. No disrespect to, you know, the wonderful artisans in developing countries, but why should they all be there? Why aren't they here? Why isn't there a place for them right here in the developed world as well? So to the extent that that's sustainable or circular, I started with, you know, just wanting to inspire more mindful way of expressing yourself or consuming, and I wanted to preserve skills. And then, of course, as my own awareness grew, then I realized that the role that the Restory could have to play in that's you know, of course, that was fantastic as well. So I guess how I would define circularity, which I think was your question, you know, I think the short answer is that you're looking for high product utilization. So you're looking for rental and repair and reselling, lending to an extent. But I really think that circularity really starts at design as well. So I remember hearing Ellen MacArthur talk about how, you know, no one, and this really resonated, like, no one really cares, like, if they own their washing machine. You know, all you wanted to do is wash the clothes, and wash the clothes and fit under your cupboard and things like that. They don't really, you know, whether you own it or not. So I think that comes into the design. You know, if you're thinking with circularity in mind, it's everything from the design of the product all the way to how you manage its either its second life or its end of life.
Thank you. And then this takes me to Kate, because what you do is something completely different, really wacky, really cool. And tell us a little bit about, you know, because you really reposition or restyle clothing. So tell us that in 2 words, because that is true circularity. So tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, it's been really interesting actually thinking about your question of what is circularity, and you know what essentially what I want to do and what I am doing by creating the conversion movement, which is basically upcycling rebranded for the fashion industry and fashionistas everywhere who don't like the idea of upcycling their clothes, which I think is a lot of people actually. It's utilizing the billions of meters of perfectly good fabric already in existence in the form of clothes that can be very easily turned into new clothes. And I think the beauty of this movement is that the actual recycling of the clothes has huge opportunity for economic growth. You know, the people who are doing the recycling can make money. It's just, for me, it's just a win-win-win. And the other, and obviously the people, we can get everybody involved. So we don't have to go and have it done somewhere else. It's harnessing the collective power of people to use what we already have and create fantastic newness that's, you know, that involves creativity and all the rest of it. And I think and becomes commercial. And so that's essentially what I'm doing with the conversion movement. And I'm actually just in the process of finishing a book, which will empower people. What I've realized, and I've created a collection of conversion couture for my Wardrobe HQ, the clothes rental site. I'm an ambassador for them, and I just wanted to show people what can be done. So I already do it through social media, but I think it's creating tangible pieces that people can rent. And the things I'm putting out there are not to be bought, they're to be rented. I want these pieces to be worn. There's too much sitting in people's closets that's not being worn. And I've also addressed the issue of sizing as well, which is something else, but I'm very excited about that. So that's essentially what it's about.
Excellent, thank you so much. Sorry to be kind of bossy here, cut you off, but we only have half an hour, so, and I'd like to talk about how can we move from circular business, from normal business model to circular business models, and actually go one step beyond, which is restorative or regenerative business models. And Tom, you talked about Loop. I'm gutted that we have not actually been able to get to the launch of it yet, but I mean, you're very inspiring. So can you tell us, I mean, you have done it and now you are moving to the next level. So yeah, tell us more about it. And if we want to all do this, if the entire world will want to move to circularity, how do we do it? And this will go to everyone. So
yeah. I'll answer this in two ways. I'll give you a specific on Loop and then the broader question, which is how do we really shift to circular? Because I think it may be unintuitive, at least the way I answer it. So on Loop, very quickly for anyone who may not know it, and you can learn more if you want to see it at loopstore.com. Just gives you a little example of what it's all about. So it's a platform where consumer product companies can create reusable versions of their products or packages. So imagine now your Häagen-Dazs ice cream is in beautiful reusable stainless steel, or your perfume bottle is in beautiful reusable crystal, depending on what level of luxury the product may be. And then retailers embed that into their physical stores and digital stores. So this has begun, it's already live with Carrefour in France and then Kroger and Walgreens in the US. And you're gonna see launches in the UK, Canada, Japan, Germany, and Australia all in the next 12 months. So it's expanding, starting with fast moving consumer goods, but we're already seeing some amazing companies that are big, especially in personal care on the luxury and prestige side. The biggest learning I've had, and this may seem uninspired, but at least what it's taught me is how to enable circular economy in a big way, is we should really focus on what the stakeholders understand the most and what is their deep desires, even if those desires are uninspired. So if we let's just give two example stakeholders. Let's say, for example, a consumer. What we have learned in Loop is that consumers like, what they want the most is the best product at the cheapest price in the most convenient way. And none of those are overtly the word sustainability. So now, within convenience, what we are really learning is in reuse systems, the goal is the gold standard of convenience is throw something away, right? That's in and of itself a very convenient behavior. The problem with throwing something away isn't the act of throwing it away, it's where the stuff ends up. So for example, in Loop, the way we attack that is we say, when you're done with these reusable items, throw them away, but instead of throwing them in a garbage bin or a recycling bin, you're throwing it in a reuse bin. And when that gets picked up, it goes to a cleaning and repair facility where everything is reset and sold again. But your behavior is one of throwing it away. In price, by working with large players who really understand the concept of scale, we've been able to keep the price of the content the same. The only addition is the concept of a deposit, and I'm very happy to say in developed countries, consumers are insensitive to the deposit prices. So for example, something even as mass market as a bottle of Tide laundry detergent, there the deposit on that package may be $4 or $5. Now it's in beautiful stainless steel. You could argue it's almost luxurious, but people are not sensitive to because they know they get the money back. It's just like when you go to a hotel and pay €200 when you check in. No one cares because you're going to get the money back. Now that doesn't work for people who are living at the bottom of the pyramid, but at least it works in middle and up. And then in features, sustainability is a feature. It absolutely is something that makes the product objectively better. But what people, and this has been the biggest, I'd say disappointing but enlightening learning for me in Loop, is that if you check out, say, loopstore.com, you'll see it there. People enter first because of the beautiful design and then are delighted by the sustainability. But they first go for packaging that just looks gorgeous and so on. So we have to play into that. And it's much easier to swim downhill and produce systems that people will convert people, not, and versus trying to ask them to do much more than they really will, because then sustainability will be very aspirational. We'll read about it in magazines about living in tiny homes and, you know, filling our olive oil ourselves, but we don't actually do it. And the same goes for the stakeholders, like consumer product companies or retailers, is not go in from a tone of responsibility, but go in from a tone of, here's how you can win. Here's how you can get market share. Here's how you can delight the consumer. Here's how you can win on the P&L. And people will want to do those things through purpose versus through benign things like just TV commercials, but it has to be framed in that. And the test of this, and I'll conclude on this point, is that if the stakeholder, especially a corporate stakeholder, says, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do, that's actually a really bad feedback. Because what that means is that person basically is saying, well, I'm going to do it, and I haven't figured out any other way to justify it other than, you know, it's the right thing to do, so that's why I'm doing it. And the problem of that is when that stakeholder moves to the next role and someone else comes in who says, show it to me on my P&L, and if you can't, then it will go away. And that's why sustainability programs may be short-lived or small. And the trick to scale is really make sure to frame it in what the most easy desires are of that stakeholder.
That is fantastic. And I'd like to take the next question actually to Vanessa, because what you do is you repair. And I know this because you have repaired my most precious items that I don't trust anyone to do, and you guys do a fantastic job. So if you need anything remotely that you have some kind of affection towards it, take to Restory. So I mean, how do you build that? How do you scale that? Because it's also not just about what you do, but it's the people. So tell us a little bit more about that, and then also how do you move to these to mass scale?
It's so first I'll what Tom was saying really resonates to me. So I feel sometimes I feel a little bit fraudulent coming on these talks about circularity and sustainability when that wasn't my initial impetus, and I'm very much a beneficiary of it. But I also I feel like I did feel like that the altruism is fleeting and it's not a business model. So if you're not making people feel, for us, we want to recreate that buying experience, because let's face it, it's fun and there's a lot of benefit in it, and you know, if we can recreate if we can recreate that experience of why you bought that thing to begin with, and you know, why it's found a special place in your life, then we've really done our job. In terms of how you scale it, it's hard. And it's taken us a long time to crack how to do that. So basically what we've, so I spent 8 years at Accenture, so I'm a bit of a process engineer to begin with. So there was some of this stuff I could just work out. But really it came down to collecting a lot of data and being able to see things like wear patterns and colors, and paying attention to makes and models, and finding the materials that they use, and being able to identify things like fake Hermes, because the materials they use is inconsistent with a normal Hermes, and therefore we actually would need to charge a little bit more for that because there's risk involved in it. So it's a lot of data and a lot of patterns that we seek through that data, and then putting in the technical and process things around it that help us scale it.
Thank you. And Jorg, for you, in terms of moving from, you are already regenerative in what you do. So which kind of advice would you give to anyone who wants to do what you're doing? Because it's very, very brave, and you've been very successful. So what kind of advice would you give people to do what you're doing?
Sorry, is that one directed to me?
To Jorg.
Oh, to Jorg, okay.
Sorry, to me?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, okay. Can you just how we have gotten to this and why we have been successful in it?
No, I mean, you're already, circular, and you up to a point also regenerative, like you have
Sorry. I listened to what Tom said when we spoke earlier about sort of regenerating and getting away from something which is just circular. And I think, you know, one of the things that I would say is, you know, one of the things that we do is we customize people's existing timepieces. And it's a little bit the same with, you know, as Vanessa, taking something that's been used before and giving it new life. Because in a very simple way, it could be, you know, you've had a timepiece for, you know, 10 years and maybe the color on the dial doesn't please you as it used to. So you want to have it something different. And so we go in with them and, you know, discuss, well, what can we do here? And then try and make it a piece which they then will start enjoying more again. But I also have to say that, you know, after we spoke earlier, it sort of made me think, well, are there other things that we can do, which I'm not going to talk about here? But I think it is a very interesting thing, you know, in particular. It's almost like going from a manufacturing business into a servicing business. In how do we get away from all this making into, I mean, essentially, think if we could get away from the making and the transportation, you know, 3D engineering and so forth, and just make less and less and service more and more. I mean, I think first of all, it creates a much healthier planet, you know, which is beyond doubt, but it also creates healthier businesses. And I don't know which angle we started out for. It was certainly a bit mixed, right? Did we want to create a healthier business, or did we want to, you know, give more back or take less? And I think, you know, when I look back, it's definitely a mixture between the two. And I can only say that, you know, as we have changed, we have created for ourselves a much healthier business. And in particular, when we look at what's going on right now with the world, you know, basically closing down, and we read daily how, you know, the price of oil turns negative, you know, fashion companies have, you know, stopped beyond belief, you know, et cetera, and you know, with a circular model, you can relax a lot more. And I say that from a personal experience, right? Is that, you know, we go into this, and I would say not a lot changes, and I don't think it's because we are where we are, but I think it's because we have adopted a different type of operating, and that certainly includes making less and servicing more.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jorn. And Kate, I mean, I guess it's the last question for you, because you are in that space of complete circularity plus a complete business model. So it's all about renting, not buying. So which advice would you give to people who are starting to think about to move from this linear to circularity? I mean, how would you do it?
I think you start with where you're at, obviously, and I think you have to sort of first of all make a decision that you want to take a different view, and I mean, on a practical, I'll answer it just on a practical basis. I think really, you know, everybody has the power to create a lot of newness from what they've got, and I think really it's all about starting with that, and I think that just even by taking those actions, you will be influencing, you know, everyone around you with creativity and inspiration, and you know, that's infectious, and if we all start doing that, it can have a, you know, a seismic effect on the way that we consume. So that would be my practical. It's start with what you've got, find what you've got hidden within what you've got, and make the decision. I think that's really important. Yeah, that's really it.
Thank you so much. We're going to go quickly to the Q&As, and then you'll have some time to think about the one last thought. So think about that while we go through the Q&As. So we have says, are you seeing any move towards alternatives to the use of leather amidst the luxury brands? As an end-to-end process, how are materials assessed for sustainability, and also reusing the fabric materials to make any new products? Any thoughts on that, perhaps Tom or Jorn?
Well, I can certainly add in on that, and you know, it is something, you know, first of all, say it's, you know, when we've done this, right, it's about taking small steps, a little bit to what was asked before. you know, because when you tackle this, it can be such a big elephant in the room. Where do you start and how do you end up there? And I think it's like taking small steps. And I would also say with using leather, we don't really like using leather. There are still some sort of, you know, legacy products, straps, boxes, etc., where we still have leather in them. But going forward, it is something where we want to use reusable, recyclable, and natural materials, and certainly not something which has been taken from an animal, whether it has been farmed or it's a byproduct of something else. But as I said, it's not something you do between Monday and Tuesday. It is something along the road.
Thank you. I mean, whoever wants to take this one, do you think customers care about circularity? Are they educated enough? Is there a way, how would you communicate that they are a circular brand?
I'll try a little bit on this. And as I said in Loop, what I've learned a lot is that fundamentally what drives, people care, but what people care about isn't necessarily what they action on. And I think there's a big difference between how we are in our minds and how we are in our actions. We are probably better in our minds than we are in our actions, I think. And so, but all that really matters is what is in our actions, because that's what affects the world. And we're pretty horrible as consumers. We're sort of assholes, we like to benefit ourselves. We want that to be, cheap, affordable, and awesome and convenient. So I think that is the way that chess pieces move on the chessboard. We have to really accept that, because that is human behavior. We're selfish creatures. And then we need to play into that and not highlight that this is, so if you think about the organic food movement, maybe here's a proxy to it. Why are people buying organic food? It has nothing to do with preserving the butterflies and the bees and better for the world. It's entirely because I feel it's going to be better for my body. That is what drives organic food, almost entirely. Now that's a very selfish decision to do that, right? And the more we frame the benefit of circularity, whether it's, as Jorn was saying, the idea of not consuming animals, whether on products or ingesting them, whether it's more sustainable fashion choices, whatever this may be, it needs to be framed. The easiest way to get the consumer to do it is to frame it in why it's better for them. Them individually. If that can't be, then at least how it's better for their family. And the further you go out, the harder it will be. The worst version is it's better for the planet. That will get the least amount of active response. And let's play into it. I wish human beings were better. I'm included in this, but we're not. And let's play into who we are. And I think this is the big issue in the sustainability movement, is we expect more from people than what they really are willing to do. And we don't have time to be aspirational right now. We have to move into things that are going to get people to act. And I would focus on that in a very, very big way as you think about it in your business, is frame it in that selfish context. It's not a sort of an enlightened point of view, but it's a pragmatic one that drives actual physical response.
Thank you very much, Tom. And Vanessa, your son is super cute. Don't put him away. This is what live Zoom is all about. So great.
I agree. I did offer to have him sit on my lap, but he's a bit camera shy.
Okay, this is a question. So how can luxury beauty move towards circularity? And any example of best practice that you have seen? Anyone? Probably for me, actually, best example is, for example, refillables. So you have refillable perfumes like Louis Vuitton and, anti-aging and stuff like Dior. So probably that's the best thing in terms of circularity. And they're also a French company, which I can't remember the name right now, that actually do boxes that, subscription. And every time that you send a new whatever it is that you buy, you send the packaging back, and then they refill it again. So probably those are the best examples. How do we conceptualize a circular economy model in our design thinking? Is there a prototype worldwide standards that is recommended?
I'm going to try this if I may. The biggest miss, if you think about the physical, there's many aspects of circular economy, but the easiest, the starting point is the physical aspect, right? What happens with the object? How is it sourced, and what happens with the object at its end of life? The number one issue here within design that is chronic across every industry I've ever worked with is that things are not designed with the end of life in mind. Now, that's not just designing, and when you do that, the way to, and this is the big fundamental miss, and I'll give one very quick example to highlight this, which is it's not about asking the people who are in charge of end of life, the recyclers, the composters, the waste management, whatever, the reuse, the repair. It's not just asking them, could you do something? It's asking them, would you want to do this? If this suddenly showed up in your system, would you be happy with it, or would you not? And this is very important. I'll highlight it in compostable packaging. Many people think compostable packaging is a good thing. It's trended very positively. So why would Tesco, the #1 retailer in the UK, cancel the idea of compostable packaging and not allow their buyers? This happened at the end of 2019. They had their buyers no longer be allowed to purchase any product in compostable packaging. That's a very, very big public decision. And the reason they did this is when people design compostable packaging, they went to composters, the end-of-life managers in that particular case study, and asked, could you compost this? And good composters said, yes, if you put it into our system in 90 days, this material, like a PLA, the industrially compostable material, will compost. That's a good question. But then when Tesco brought in all the composters, many of the composters in the UK, I remember I was in this meeting, and they asked, what happens with all the compostable plastics and so on that are in your feedstock? You know what the British composting effectively industry said? Oh, we sort it out and burn it. And so if you think you've composted in the UK, or frankly, almost any country, compostable packaging, you haven't. And Tesco was shocked, like I'm sure many of you are, and they said, why? And the composters said, well, we don't actually want it. It could compost, but we don't want it. We don't want it because when you ask consumers to put say a compostable fork, they're also going to put a non-compostable fork, and how can we as a composter in yucky food waste tell the difference? Then even if that was solved, we may want to run our compost system quickly, maybe in 30 days, not 90 days, which is what this plastic would restrict us to. And even if that was solved, it doesn't even create anything a plant wants to grow out of. And so as you think about designing for circularity, because that's a really good intention, really ask the people who would have to deal with your product when it's over, and every product has an end of life, it's just a question of when, not if. Would they want it? Not could they do something with it?
That's great. Thank you so much. And we have a question for Jorn. We just moved. Sorry, I had it here and it just moved for a second. Sorry, I had the question here and now it's gone. Okay. Would you have any advice for a business today looking to introduce circular models such as a resale platform, Jorn?
If I had any advice, I guess I can only start from speaking from our own point of view. And obviously, the resale market for luxury watches has been going for many years. It's become a lot more predominant in the last sort of half decade. And I thought maybe it actually runs back to the original question, what is circular economy? And for us, it was about taking responsibility for everything we have ever made. And with that comes in the resale platform. So I think if I have any recommendation, I would say, almost any type of business that makes sort of a permanent product can have a resale platform integrated into their business model. Obviously not for foods, etc., but any fashion, any apparel, really anything else that makes a product that has some residual value. And I think we just see it from across all the platforms that exist already, right?
Thank you.
Can I jump onto that one? Yeah. Just so people are always saying to us, will you, particularly investors, will you get into reselling? Will you get into this? Will you get into that? And we're like, there are so many good partners now that like for us, it's better. But rather than go and try and compete with every reseller, the vestiaires and rather than go and try and compete in that market, for us, it's much better for us to find really good partners and have really good relationships with them, with whom we've integrated those extraneous pieces of our to the ends of our service.
Thank you. This is a question about, it's a question for Tom. Do you think that the new generation of Friday for Future is better in acting towards good for the planet instead of good for me?
You know, this goes, I think, to the same, so let me answer it this way. I think the younger generations are very inspiring to me because well, I think they're still based in what I was saying. You know, we are better in our minds than in our actions. The younger generations are really good at speaking out in a way that they can break through the clutter and be heard. You know, in talks, you know, when I'm in conferences, whether it's, you know, say the World Economic Forum or others, and a young person who's like 12, 13 gets up on stage, they are direct, they're bold, you know, and they're saying things that like, you know, my generation or my parents' generation would never even dream of saying. And they're holding, you know, the generation in power today, I think, much more accountable. With that said, I think that generation still goes to a Starbucks and buys their coffee in a disposable cup and, you know, all this stuff. So I think there's a difference between the rhetoric and the action. And I think the easiest way to bridge that is how can we offer options for you know, that play into, you know, what we want in simplicity and convenience, but allow us to be fundamentally better because we want it. But in many cases, the choices don't exist, or the choices themselves ask us to compromise on things like convenience. You know, a good example of this is in products, there is the big trend right now of refill stations. I'm sure everyone's read about it. It's coming everywhere, all over Europe and North America. And what the data shows is that people love seeing refill stations in stores. They don't use them. They just buy the filled product that is right beside the refill station. So we need to sort of shift and bring the aspiration together with the action. And I think we have to do that urgently because there is no time. You know, if you look at all the different science that's out there, we're talking years before fundamental challenges. I mean, if we think COVID has been bad, the fundamental challenges that will likely come are going to be significantly worse and significantly longer lasting. So we also have to ask ourselves, how do we do this urgently? And a big part of this, and it's like, just to comment on what Jorn was saying about, you know, the incremental steps, is that you don't want to be too sort of far reaching in your sustainability idea because then it becomes a lighthouse that you never get to. So it's very important to do things that you can celebrate in sort of 90-day, 180-day increments and objectively celebrate. But the key is to move on them very quickly. And I think the other great thing to think about is, what do we stop buying? I remember I was with I think it was the editor of some fashion magazine recently. We were having an interview, and I think it was Elle, I believe. And she asked, you know, well, what do you prefer? You know, real fur or fake fur? Because both have positives and negatives. And the answer was, stop buying anything that looks like fucking fur, and that's it, and move on. And make those types of decisions instead of getting into the detail on something like that. Because even if someone's wearing fake fur, you have all the plastic runoff from it. And it's even promoting the concept of a fur. There's so many amazing choices, and the palettes are so infinite that, you know, we also need to sort of make some bold edits and push these things in the right direction.
Thank you, and I love your passion. Last question that we'll ask live, but I would like to ask each one of you if you can actually answer the questions on the Q&A section that you have on the bottom of the screen. The last question is for Kate, before we go to your final thoughts. Kate, in the back of what Tom just said about generations, do your customers belong to a specific generation?
No, I think that actually this is what the fun of what I'm doing. I completely concur with his comments. Actually, I think the youth, like young people, just have this extraordinary power. I'm constantly amazed and just absolutely awe-inspired by it, and we've got to capitalize on that, I think. But no, I mean, my mother's generation, you know, enjoys doing this as much as my teenage stepdaughters, and I think that's the fun of it. It's multi-generational, and yeah, but the young people are really into it. Like, you know, we're talking about whether it's cool or not, or, you know, you've got to appeal to people's selfishness And the young people are just like, they want to do it because it's cool. The older people want to do it because it's cool, because it's fun too, but they're not quite as motivated as the young people who probably got more energy. Maybe that's the way of putting it.
Thank you very much. So one last thought, and then over to Claudia. So I like to start with Vanessa. How to move to circularity? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry. I would say if you're a product, start at design. If you're a service, you're there, but you need to be refining what you do and keep digging for. I think what Kate said, start where you are and look at how you can do better. And I think if you're not one of these, if you're not a product and you're not a servicer of products, if you have something else, I think you need to. And for everyone, I think you need to just look at your business practices and or see how you can partner with others to further the objective.
Thank you, Kate.
I think it's about looking at the longevity of each thing, at everything you've got around you, everything, and just seeing whether you're optimizing whatever the life of you've got it has. If it's clothes, are you maximizing wearage potential? You know, just how can you maximize usage of everything around you? I think for me that's what it's about. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
I think an easy way to do it is to think about anything that you acquire, anything that you spend money on, that you have to keep spending money on over and over and evaporates and doesn't come back, whether it's as simple as a shipping container or even the service of shipping, and think about how you can bend all those functions in a way that they can in some way come back to you.
Thank you. Jorn.
Well, I mean, so a slightly different one. I think what we call luxury goods should really be leading in this, because it's also part of going back to what luxury was 250 years ago. And I think it's one of the founders of the MS family who said, if you can repair it, it's luxury.
Thank you. And thank you very much for everybody to taking part today. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here virtually with you all. I will be very grateful if you can answer the questions to everybody who has asked them. And now over to the magnificent Claudia.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Jorn. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Tom, for sharing your thoughts with us. This Friday, we'll have another webinar. We'll be discussing how businesses can plan for success both during and after the pandemic with Ray Newton-Smith, the chief economist at the CDI. So you can sign up to our newsletter today to reserve your spot for this webinar. Thank you all for joining. Bye.